Alright, let's dive straight to the point because this is a serious topic. What are the top 3 ways to lip sync in a TikTok video so that you always manage to appear dumber than your friend? Just kidding. We are in 2020. How come science has not progressed enough that everyone is saying it will still take 12 to 18 months for a vaccination against COVID-19 to be out there?
The ultimate solution, the only thing that really lets us go back completely to normal is to create a vaccine. The best case that people like myself and Dr. Fauci are saying is about 18 months.
If we have a vaccine, it will prevent coronavirus from infecting us with COVID-19. I hope all of us are clear on the distinction between the coronavirus and COVID-19. Coronavirus is the virus, also called as SARS-CoV-2, Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome Coronavirus 2. COVID-19 is the disease. Just like HIV virus causes AIDS, coronavirus causes COVID-19. The virus causes the disease. The virus is not same as the disease. Like your professor causes you to hate him, but the professor is not hate. He's just a virus. All that we really need to do to understand why this vaccine making thing takes so long is to look at some of the existing vaccinations that we already have. Research for the common cold vaccine started in 1950s. We still don't have a vaccine that works. The only reason it's not that big of a deal is because people usually don't die of common cold. I mean, if they started dying of common cold, it wouldn't be called common cold. I mean, it would be called a killer cold. But that's not necessarily true for AIDS, for example. People die of AIDS all the time. Just to be clear, today we do have very effective antivirals for AIDS, which will treat someone who gets infected with AIDS because of HIV virus. It is because of these antivirals that we don't hear so much about the deaths by AIDS today as we used to do earlier. We do have successful vaccines for several diseases. In fact, of the 14 vaccines routinely recommended in the current vaccine schedules, a single guy developed 8 of them. Vaccination for mumps, measles, hepatitis A, hepatitis B, chickenpox, meningitis, pneumonia, and Haemophilus influenza. Hillman, who passed away in 2005, is attributed for saving more lives than any medical scientist in the 20th century. The live mumps virus vaccine that Hillman developed in 1960s holds the record for the fastest vaccine ever approved. He collected the viral samples from his own daughter's mouth in 1963. She was infected with mumps, and by 1967, the vaccine was licensed. So that's 4 years of vaccine development, and remember, this is the best that we have done so far, till date. But consider this, there already was a 20 years work of research on mumps virus before Hillman even started his work in 1963. The mumps virus had been detected way back in 1934, they had been isolated by 1945, and a dead virus vaccine already existed by 1948. It's just that this earlier vaccine produced only short-term immunity. It was eventually discarded once Hillman had his vaccine out. We don't even have to look at so much in the past. Let's look at 2015 when 3 new vaccines were approved. A vaccination against malaria, another one against dengue, and this third vaccination against EV71, enterovirus 71. Want to know how much time in the making did they take? We have known about the malaria virus since 1880, we have known about the dengue virus since 1907, and the EV71 virus was isolated all the way back in 1965. And some of these vaccines are not even effective enough. The malaria vaccine, for example, approved in 2015, it requires 4 injections and is not even recommended to be given to children. The one for dengue is even worse. If that vaccine is given to someone who has never been infected with dengue, then it actually increases your chances of catching dengue. It's only for people who have already been infected previously. Since 2015, only one more vaccine has been approved. That was for Ebola, and it happened only 6 months back. Relatively speaking, its development was pretty fast. How much time did it take? 5 years. So you see the point I'm trying to make, right? So do you see a COVID-19 vaccine be out there in 12 to 18 months? Imagine you have a child who has always scored just 33%, alright? 33% always, that just one time she scored 50%. When was it? When you promised to buy her a brand new iPad and a 4 BHK flat. That's it. That is when she scored 50%. And now this child is telling you that she's going to score 90% this year, and you don't have to laugh on her face, just laugh behind her back. Alright, jokes apart, forget 90%. Is this child going to get even 33% this time, given that she's spending all her time creating TikTok videos on a brand new iPad, sitting in her fucking 4 BHK flat? Look, our scientists across the world are obviously working very hard to make sure we have a vaccine as soon as possible.
हाँ सर, मिली वो बॉटल, वो ड्रग वाली?
नहीं, अभी जीता भी नहीं।
कमाल कर रहे हो सर आप।
क्यों?
टाइम कहाँ है हमारे पास?
मतलब?
Even if, say, we get a vaccine between 12 to 18 months, is this as good as it gets? Or is it possible that science can progress so much then we can probably have a vaccine, if not within few weeks, in few months? This is what I'm going to dig deep into. See, our development of a vaccine is basically a three-step process. One, we create a potential vaccine that could work. It's called a vaccine candidate. Two, we test this vaccine candidate to see if it is safe and effective. And three, once the safety and effectiveness is proven, we mass produce and get everyone immunized. A vaccine candidate is a vaccine that works in theory and sometimes in animals, but we don't really know if it works in humans till we test it. Just like every Bihari is a potential IAS candidate, but we don't know if they'll become IAS officers till they write that UPSC exam. So how long does it take to create few vaccine candidates that can be tested? Remember that mumps story that I told you where the virus had been discovered in 1934? It took 11 years for the virus to be isolated, and unless you have isolated the virus, you can't really work on the vaccine candidate. We have been getting faster with time. For example, the measles epidemic hit Greenland in 1951. By 1954, we were able to isolate the virus, and another 4 years, we had few vaccine candidates to go for trials. When the SARS epidemic happened in early 2000s, we took just 5 months to identify the virus, and in only 20 more months, we had few vaccine candidates ready. So how are we doing in 2020? We have Usain bolted the shit out of this vaccine candidate creation process. We came to know about the virus only in January. Within days, we had the genetic sequence decoded, and as I speak, in May end, we have around 100 vaccine candidates already there, some of them already being tested on humans. That's some hardcore scientific progress for you. One of the reasons why we have been able to go super fast with this vaccine candidate creation process is because of a lot of newer techniques that we have been trying. Mrna, a US biotech company for example, could create its vaccine candidate in just 42 days from the day the gene sequence was identified. Its vaccine candidate is called mRNA 1273, and yes, that's the name Elon Musk was contemplating for his son before he settled for however the fuck you pronounce it. Chantu?
Elon Musk and singer Grimes welcome their first child together, and he may have the most unique celebrity baby name ever, XA12.
And now that I think about it, I'm so glad that my dad, whose name is Ashok Jha, who could have named me Amrit Jha, did not do that. He didn't do that with any of his children. All of my siblings are Vats. I guess my dad, Ashok Jha, did not want his children to suffer what he probably suffered in college. Hey, Chantu! Alright, so has India created any of these 100 vaccine candidates that I just talked about?
So there are about a total of 30 groups in India, big industry to individual academics, who are trying to develop vaccines.
From what I could find out, Serum Institute of India, that is Catella, Bharat Biotech and Biological E are working on some kind of vaccine candidates, but the status is not very clear to me. All of them are most likely going with the conventional methods of vaccine candidate creation, and so only by the year end they probably will hit the trials. Which is a shame, because as a famous man once said, we were quite ahead of our times, even in the time of Mahabharat.
मेरी जो छोटी सी समझ है उसके हिसाब से मुझे लगता है कि कर्ण का जो जन्म हुआ था वो स्टेम सेल का साइंस था, टेक्नोलॉजी थी.
Usually a vaccine candidate that has been tested on animals is then tested on humans in 3 main phases. Now there is a phase 0 and a phase 4, but phase 1 to 3 are the most important phases. The objective of phase 0 is just to see if the vaccine behaves in humans as is expected of them from the preclinical studies. The dosage given here is so low that it is of no significance use, but we get some sort of a feeler that alright, now it's good time to go ahead with some sort of a real test. It's like when the waiter pours some wine for you and wants you to smell it. How is it, sir? The phase 0 usually takes about a month, and then we get to phase 1 where around 20 to 80 healthy volunteers are given a different dosage of the vaccine. We want to see if the vaccine is safe or these healthy volunteers turn into unhealthy, abnormal zombies who hate people based on their religion or the color of their skin. Just to be clear, in this phase 1, we are only testing if the vaccine is not doing something which it is not supposed to do. We are not so much concerned about what it can do and it helps and benefits at all. It's like you have just started to date someone new and all that you are checking for is that this new person is not violent and throws you under a train like your last boyfriend did. You don't care about love at this point of time. If you live, love would probably happen. Or not. But you wouldn't die. I mean, you could die, but at least you wouldn't die because you went steady with a parasitic abusive asshole to begin with. It's very important to test for safety because amongst other things, vaccine-induced enhancement is the worst thing that could happen, which basically means because you took the vaccine, you are now more prone to get infected. It happens all the time. And that's one of the reasons why you don't want to start trial with too many people to begin with. And we have all these phases. Alright, so what are the updates we have by May end? Mrna, about which I spoke earlier, started its phase 1 trial in March in Seattle. But what you should probably know that the phase 1 human trials of mRNA 1273 was started even before animal trials had concluded. So the next time you see zombies walking in Seattle, you know where they came from. As of now, May end, phase 2 trial of Ad5-nCoV vaccine is already underway in Wuhan. While in phase 1 the objective is to find the right dosage, which is safe enough, in phase 2, our objective is to find the right balance between safety and efficacy. As per China's National Health Commission, there are 5 vaccine candidates that are already undergoing phase 2 trials, and it's being reported that this second phase could be wrapped up by July. Another vaccine candidate from Oxford's Jenner Institute are under phase 1/2, basically means that they did not wait for phase 1 to conclude before they started phase 2, so they're kind of running in parallel. What about India? As I already said, because we still are kind of trying to develop the vaccine candidates, the trial can at best happen by year end. What the Serum Institute in Pune is also trying to do is plan a trial to assess the effectiveness of an existing vaccine called BCG, traditionally used for tuberculosis. And Serum Institute is not alone. Almost every country in this world is trying to see if BCG can work against COVID-19. But the thing with BCG is it has existed since 1921. And it has been proven to be pretty ineffective against even tuberculosis, the very disease for which it exists. It's like कभी-कभी आप चाय इतनी खराब बनाते हो कि मम्मी बोलती है कि मेरे को चाय नहीं पीनी भाई, मैं बना लूँगी खुद ही. पापा सो रहे होते हैं, and I'm like यार चाय तो बना दी है. फिर आप पापा के जगने के टाइम पे उसी चाय को गर्म करके पापा पे ट्राई करते हो कि क्या मालूम काम कर जाए. That is what BCG is, guys. Anyway, so at this point of time, nobody basically knows which vaccine candidate will eventually work. And also consider this, every volunteer who is been given the vaccine has at some point to get infected for you to check if the vaccine is working or not. Almost 70% of all vaccines that are in phase 2 fail to proceed to the next phase. So the big question is there any way we can fasten this whole clinical trial process? Earlier experiences tell us you could do it, but it comes at a very big risk. In 1976, trials for a swine flu vaccine were rushed through in spite of warnings from WHO. After 45 million people were vaccinated, it turned out the flu was mild, but 450 people ended up catching a rare disorder. 30 people died. 30 healthy people died. The most recent example, 2017, a rushed campaign, this time even endorsed by WHO, to vaccinate 1 million children in the Philippines against the dengue had to be halted for safety reasons. 10 healthy children died and the Philippines government indicted 14 state officials. This time around in our fight against COVID-19, the clinical trials are even more important because some of the methods that we are using to create these vaccine candidates are something that we have never tried earlier, maybe for animals but not for humans. See, conventional methods of vaccine candidate development has been to let your body take some sort of a weakened version of the original virus itself.
जैसा लोहा लोहे को काटता है, वैसा चूतिया है तो चूतियों को मारेगा ना.
Our bodies always produce antibodies when they come in contact with the virus, but when it's the actual potent virus, then sometimes there's just not enough time for the immune system to respond, and in the meantime the virus can damage enough or even kill us. But when a weakened version of the virus is given to us, we remain safe. At the same time, enough time is given to the immune system to respond and produce these antibodies. That's how vaccination works. Now, the newer method of vaccine candidate development relies on the fact that what is a virus particle after all? It is a bunch of protein which has RNA inside it, right? With this protein goes inside the body, it is this RNA which controls your cells and makes them produce more viruses. But what this understanding tells us, we can have alternate ways to trigger our immune system than giving a weakened version of the virus. If you look at all the 100 coronavirus vaccine candidates right now, majority of them are not weakened versions of viruses. They are simply protein subunit molecules designed to trigger similar immune system response as the actual virus or the weakened version of the virus is supposed to do. Then we have this mRNA technique which Moderna used to create its mRNA 1273. Here you don't even give any protein to your body, you directly give messenger RNA to your cell, and that asks your cell to create those proteins. Instead of mRNA, you could also give DNA, and you don't have to inject mRNA or DNA directly to your body. An easier way or a less complex way is to put this mRNA or DNA inside another safer virus. It's called a vector virus, which is not dangerous, and then put this virus inside the body. The guys at Oxford, for example, use this viral vector method to create their vaccine. All these new techniques, they have just not been tested enough, and that's why, as I said, clinical trials for them are so much more important. Is it possible for the clinical trials to become faster, at least in the future, if not now? Some do believe that as AI, artificial intelligence, progresses, it is kind of possible to make it even more efficient. I can give you one example how. 80% of all clinical trials fail because of enrollment issues. Enrollment meaning enrolling volunteers to actually take that vaccine for the trial. When AI evolves, then that technology can be used to automatically extract information of medical records of a lot of people, which can eventually shorten the whole process of enrollment. And this was one example, but yes, use of artificial intelligence can definitely make this whole process much more faster, because right now it is little slow. It is based on a lot of manual processes to get all these volunteers to start participating in these trials. Alright, let's imagine a vaccine has finally passed all the phases 1, 2, 3 of human clinical trials. What happens next? The vaccine needs to be mass produced, and even before that, our regulatory body needs to verify all the test results. And if you think it's just some paperwork that can be wrapped up very quickly, hear me out. In 1950s, a poorly produced batch of polio vaccine was approved in just few hours. It contained a version of the virus that was not quite dead, so those who got the vaccine ended up contracting polio. Many children died. See, when it comes to vaccination, you can't rush these processes, because eventually healthy people are taking vaccinations. In case of measles, after the vaccine was licensed, it still took 12 years for most to be vaccinated. 19 million doses in 12 years. For COVID-19, as per an estimate, about 60 to 70% of the entire population needs to be immune to the virus for it to not spread as much, which is 60 to 70% of 8 billion people. Another important question is, if we get that first vaccine shot, would that be enough? There is evidence that human beings do not develop long-lasting immunity from coronaviruses. It's most likely going to be different than a one-time polio vaccine. So will we need a coronavirus vaccine every 2 years, every 5 years, every year? Nobody knows. By the way, when a vaccine which has gone through phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 is used on millions and millions of people, it could still show a side effect that wasn't detected earlier. So data still needs to be recorded. This is called the phase 4 of clinical trials, the post-approval monitoring. Sometimes even this can delay the whole process. It's like सब कुछ सही चल रहा है, बारात आ चुकी है, शादी हो रही है, लेकिन जब तक फेरे नहीं हुए, शादी संपन्न नहीं हुई. Alright, I know everything I am sharing is sounding pretty depressing and pretty shitty at this point of time, but there's one thing that we Indians can definitely cheer about: manufacturing. All said and done, India happens to be the biggest vaccine manufacturer in the world. Almost 50% of the global vaccine demand is met just by India. The Serum Institute of India, based in Pune, is world's biggest vaccine maker, producing 1.5 billion doses per year. See, there is one tricky thing though. Indian manufacturers are good at manufacturing vaccines, but all these vaccines are made using conventional methods. What happens when for COVID-19 the finally approved vaccine happens to be, say, an mRNA vaccine? Would India still be able to manufacture it? Most likely not. It's like a factory designed to make balloons. Could it make condoms? I mean, it could, but you would have to change few things here and there, and that will take its own sweet time. You would have to figure out where to source that particular flavor of chocolate and vanilla from, because when you're making balloons, nobody gives a fuck about the flavor, but when making condoms, I still don't know who gives a fuck about flavor, but you know, things are different. So India could still take a lead in manufacturing, but only if the vaccines that are finally approved are the conventionally created ones. Not everyone believes that's going to be the case though. For example, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has said it will build factories for 7 different vaccines.
Even though we'll end up picking at most 2 of them, we're going to fund factories for all 7, just so that we don't waste time in serially saying, okay, which vaccine works, and then building the factory.
While vaccination is a preventive way to solve the problem by giving it to all the healthy people, we do have antivirals which are given to people who are getting infected. The discovery of an altogether new antiviral is a long and arduous process, so what everyone is doing is repurposing an existing antiviral. The drug that is generating the most excitement currently is remdesivir. It has existed for a decade now. In fact, it was designed for Ebola. Is there anything other than vaccination and antivirals that can help fight COVID-19?
BJP MLA in Guwahati, Suman Haripriya, claimed that cow urine and dung can cure the virus.
Other than vaccines and antivirals, we are trying out monoclonal antibodies and blood plasma transfers. Both of these are essentially methods to trigger the immune system, and then there are other approaches like stem cell and immune suppressants.
वो शरीर पर से एक छोटा सा हिस्सा लिया और उसी में से कर्ण पैदा हुए। अब स्टेम सेल वाले यही करते हो ना?
This is all that I have for you, and I know this video became a little long. I think it became so long that by the time you're almost finished watching it, a vaccination or a cure for COVID-19 is already out. But if that hasn't happened yet, just hang on tight and stop bitching about science. As we saw, science has definitely progressed a lot. In fact, it is progressing so much that before we have to deal with the next epidemic or pandemic, we would most likely be killed in a war waged by AI-driven bots. But I guess that would be a cooler way to die. At least we could expect a Schwarzenegger to come and save us at the last moment. Let me know what you would like me to analyze in the next episode of What's Analysis. I will be back. Hi, this is Amrit, your creative, funny, insightful storyteller. I make a lot of videos, I vlog about my life, I make short documentary films. 3-minute stories. Companies, non-profits, startups, schools, universities, they hire me to tell their stories or the stories of those they impact so that they can sell more, raise funds, attract people to work for them. And then there's the second type of stories where I go find amazing individuals doing amazing things, and they don't hire me as such, but I tell their stories because their stories deserve to be told. In fact, you can help me fund those stories at patreon.com/whatsapp. I come from an IIT business consulting background, but after a few years of corporate job, took a break to become a wedding photographer. I still shoot at weddings across India. There is something beautiful about creating art from weddings. There is something beautiful about creating art from anything.